It's time for Ask Mike Mondays. Mike answers one listener's question every week. Here's Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to Ask Mike Mondays. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And joining me today, the man himself with a new fresh haircut, at least I think, the governor of the great state of Texas, Mr. Michael Becker. Michael, how are you?
Hey, Paul, doing pretty good. Ready to, I think we're all kind of ending the quarantine now. So it's getting a little bit back to closer to normal. So looking forward to not being trapped in my house so much.
So you've been released by the warden over at the Becker prison?
So, somewhat. Work release, I guess, is probably what it is. So still spending my evenings in jail, but we're starting to get back at it, about to open up our office again here in the next week or so as we record this. So looking forward to going to the office.
So have you been out for a steak at all or for dinner outside? I mean, when we talk about the state of Texas opening up a little bit, which is kind of different from maybe the rest of the country, what kind of a personal impact does that have on you?
We just went to 50% capacity at restaurants in the state of Texas here just the last couple of days as we record this. But a week or so ago, I went actually out to dinner and it was 25% capacity and it was weird. Everything's all spaced out and, there was people sort of out and about, but it was pretty dead still on kind of the most trendiest part of town on a Friday night when I went to dinner. So it's definitely not normal, but it's starting to kind of get some signs of life. So I'm starting to get optimistic. And I think, the more people go out or they see other people go out, I think that'll kind of breed some confidence and we'll kind of get back at it here in Texas. And I think we're kind of, generally speaking, Texas, Georgia, Florida are kind of some of the states that are on the more leading edge of the reopening process. So hopefully the rest of the country will follow suit in the coming weeks and months behind this.
Well, as everybody knows, we like to ask Mike the questions under Ask Mike Mondays because he is a former banker that's turned into an owner of real estate. Mike and his group over at SPI, they own over 6,000 units. Is that 25 or 26 or 27 large buildings, Mike? I always forget.
Yeah, we're somewhere around 23, 24. I should know, but we were kind of buying and selling. I need to go back and tally up where we shook out.
Wow. And so, as you know, he was a big lender for a large national bank and has turned that into the ownership and management of a large apartment building. So he's done a great job of that. So we appreciate Mike coming on and answering some of the questions that we have. Don't forget that if you do find value of what we talk about, go into iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. We would appreciate that. iTunes 5-star rating. And also to go on the oldcapitalpodcast.com and download James Zhang, Michael Becker's, and Paul Peebles' 17-18-page white paper report about the multifamily financing. In fact, I just got a request for that probably about 10 minutes ago about someone who was asking about your due diligence report. Mike, tell everybody a little bit about that due diligence report.
Yeah, so really what we put together was the actual sample checklist that we attached when we submit letters of intent or LOIs to potentially buy a property. We kind of put the list of the review or diligence material that we're going to want to get when we buy a deal, and kind of through that process as you're making offers based off of a T12 and a rent roll that the seller provides you. As we buy these deals, we attempt to verify as much of that stuff as possible. So it's a pretty comprehensive list. I kind of refer to it like the Christmas wish list. You don't always get everything you ask for, but it is a pretty comprehensive list that we send out, and at least the target that we try to go down the list and get as we buy properties.
So again, we asked Michael a bunch of questions, and we have one that came in today. So, Michael, back in March, we all thought the end of the world was coming with renters. No job, no income, no rent. But we've seen pretty good collections for March, April, and May. It seems that tenants are able to pay rent so far. So any updates on when and if the end of the world is coming?
Yeah, it seems like we avoided the worst of that, Paul. I mean, we are now towards the end of May as we record this. So we have basically 2 months of data, and April was far better. I think we talked about this here a few times on the podcast recently, but we normally in a normal month we were collecting 99% or better of the scheduled rents every month. So we'd have roughly 1% or a little less than 1% of the scheduled rents not actually pay, and those would either become delinquent and ultimately either skip or evict the properties. And so for April we collected 97.5%. So we had 2.5% delinquent. So 3-4 times kind of probably a normal month, but all things considered, kind of where we feared we'd be in March, it was much better. Pretty close to normal. going into May, my kind of end of April projection was that we deteriorate somewhere between kind of 50 to 100% kind of deterioration, which would take 2.5% into 375 to 5% was kind of the range I was throwing out there. And here we are. We have basically a week left in the month to go collect some more money, and we are about 3.9% delinquent as of close of business a couple days ago. So I think when it's all said and done, we're going to be probably 3.5, maybe closer to 3.25 delinquent. So, with little deterioration from the 2.5 that we had in April, but, certainly didn't kind of fall through the cliff. So that's pretty good. I mean, what you would think would happen is kind of happening. The people that had a full month of delinquency for April are now delinquent in May as well. So they're kind of digging themselves a hole that ultimately they just can't get themselves out of. So they're going to likely just ride this out until we can get some relief through the court system by, filing for eviction, actually getting these people out, or they might skip once it becomes apparent that they're going to be, evicted ultimately. But I think a lot of these people that are there, either just kind of gaming the system or just really have a true hardship and can't pay. Most of the residents, even if they had hardship, they're doing what I would consider the right thing, and they're coming in, talking to everybody, having conversation with our staff in the office, and trying to work out some sort of payment plan or some sort of relief we can work with them if they work with us, type of thing. But we do have a very small percentage, but a percentage of the tenant base that are just simply being non-responsive as we reach out by email, by phone calls, by knocking on the doors, doing kind of safety and wellness checks. They're just kind of keeping their privacy locked from the inside locked, and not responding at all to our inquiries of what's going on with them. So I think those people ultimately will be the ones that unfortunately are going to have to get evicted whenever the court system opens back up.
So I remember back about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, when this whole thing, the single family side, was kind of blowing itself up, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came out and said, hey, listen, to get some of these deadbeats out of the property, just to get them to start to move or at least start to talk, we have cash for keys that will pay you to get out of that property, just to get your keys and have you go away. Have you seen that or felt that, or has that even been a topic of conversation to try to get some of these tenants out?
Yeah, it's a topic of conversation. I think there's quite a bit of moral hazard with that, so we're trying not to go down that route. There have been discussions, with these people that just clearly aren't going to pay or don't have the capacity to pay, that hey, if they just go ahead and leave and relinquish their keys back to the property, we won't necessarily pursue collections, because with the CARES Act, you have a federally backed mortgage, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or HUD loan, or take government subsidized tenants, that you can't evict people through, can't file it till July 25th, I think it is. And then you got to give them a 30-day notice to correct the delinquency. But what it doesn't do, it doesn't forgive those contractual obligations. So, these people are going to be kind of probably at the earliest, in mid-September by the time they can get out. So as we kind of get closer to that, those people that maybe just kind of, want to go move back in with their family members or something like that, we're, willing to kind of let them out of the lease and, not go after them for the back rent that they're going to ultimately owe us. And we've seen limited success with that approach, Paul. I mean, a lot of people just simply are just going to stay until they're kind of forced to get out. And that's still several months, and they're just going to figure it out in September. And that's just going to be the tack that they take. And we have on the properties with agency loans on them, we have very limited tools in our toolbox. But, with all that said, Paul, I mean, I think we're, closing out April at 2.5% and kind of being closer to 3.25, 3.5. I guess we'll find out here in a week or so what the actual final collections for May. That's still not terrible in a macro standpoint, and I think June will likely hold up reasonably well. I mean, I'm not ready to predict July yet, but I think June will probably see, kind of a further deterioration again. I'd probably project another 50% on top of whatever it is. So if I finish out 3.5%, let's call it for May, I'm probably, 50% worse than that. So, add 175. So do math here, we'll probably be closer to 5% kind of plus minus for June would be my guess portfolio wide. So if I finish 3.5 for May, I'll probably be 5% kind of as my over under mark I set for June for delinquency. And then hopefully, we start getting a little bit better in July forward. I do know that the enhanced unemployment is going to run out in July, and it doesn't look like right now they're going to extend the enhanced unemployment at the federal level, but it does look like they're probably going to do some sort of stimulus money. So we'll see. I think a lot of the kind of the second half of the year will be, supported by whatever the next round of stimulus money to the American public is going to be. So I think that's going to be key to kind of see how that goes and see how quick we bring some of these jobs back. I think I read yesterday there's like 12 or 13% unemployment in the state of Texas right now, which, we're like 2.5 or 3% when this stuff hit in March. So, we've increased by, 10% or so in unemployment in Texas. So how much of those jobs are permanent? And how many of these jobs kind of start coming back? And a lot of these people that kind of had the gig economy that had, supplemented their income through, Uber or whatever else, know a lot of that revenue's down quite a bit as well. So we'll see how quick that stuff comes back. But as these businesses reopen and people go back on, off unemployment back to their jobs, hopefully, I'll be supportive of collections, and we get that. Maybe June will be the worst of it. June and July might be the worst of it, and then we start kind of getting over the crest and start getting back to closer to normal collection numbers.
Talking about unemployment, I mean, I think I read that Nevada was the number one state for unemployment rate. I mean, 24%, with Hawaii right behind that. Are you seeing anything? Just tribal knowledge of just talking to folks. Are you starting to see any rent appreciation, or are you starting to see any folks that are trying to actually increase their rents during this period of time?
It's funny. Each asset's a little different. Each property is a little different, and generally across the board, we've taken the approach of keeping rents basically flat, and in some cases we've declined. But some of our assets we're having normal leasing activity, and we're seeing very modest rental rate bumps on a case by case basis as well. And then some of our properties, one of the things we did in March was turn off all the programmatic unit upgrades that we had in our properties. And now we're, a couple of the properties, we're making sure we keep some upgraded units in inventory. So maybe we're not doing, basically if we had 10 units turnover in the month of May, we might have previously decided to do, say, 55 of them or 50% of them upgraded and 50% keep classic to kind of force, some rental rate growth. Now I think we're, on 3 or 4 of the assets that we kind of turned that off on. We're now saying, okay, maybe we don't do that, but we may want to make sure we have 2 upgraded units in inventory at all times, so we don't go crazy and go do half of the vacants at one time, spend a bunch of money and just have them kind of sit there. But we'll have 2 of the units that are upgraded, so the extent that there still is traffic, there still is leasing demand, to the extent that they want to pay an extra $100 or $150 or whatever it is for the nicer product, we have that in inventory. Then as we lease those units out, we will then do the next unit and kind of upgrade. So we're not going too far out ahead of our skis, but we are kind of turning that back on across the properties that we were doing the upgrade programs. So we'll kind of see how quick that goes. I know for wrong, we don't have 10 in inventory just sitting there. We only have 1 or 2. We just slash the rents and turn that back off. So I think it's a pretty measured approach to try to get back in and drive revenue up in the right direction. Because we could talk about this on maybe the next Mike Mondays, but we're certainly seeing a lot of pressure on. We have been seeing it for many years on payroll, taxes and insurance, and taxes and insurance again are continuing to be pressures in Texas now that we're seeing the renewal of our insurance policies and 2020 tax notices come out a few weeks ago.
Yeah, well, we'll probably talk about that in maybe the next 1 or 2 episodes about Ask Mike Monday, because I think that's a very topical thing to talk about, of property taxes and insurance. So if somebody wanted to get a better understanding about what you guys do, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, simply just go to the company's website, which is www.spiadvisory.com. That's SPI like spy, advisory.com. There's a contact us form. Fill that out, and we're happy to send you over some information about potentially working with us and getting on our database when we actually start doing deals again, which I'm starting to get a little bit more optimistic that day's getting ever closer, that hopefully we can start putting some high quality opportunities out there and get back to business.
One of the things I think that you guys do that I don't think very many people do is do a little sponsorship transactions. Can you tell us a little bit about, I think you guys call it advisory work. What the heck does that mean? And what do you guys look for to try to help folks that want to own real estate?
Yeah, if you have, we target people typically with 1031 money, but that's going to become harder to find here now that people aren't selling as much. But if you have some 1031 money, say 5 million or more, well, and you're out of the area and you want to come to Texas and buy a property in Texas, but don't know anybody or maybe don't have the ability to put these deals together, we'll help those folks kind of take their money to leverage our relationships, our experience, and kind of help them put these deals together and place debt and, get home on their 1031s or place the capital look into place. So, if you fit your situation, also go to spiadvisory.com, fill that out, and we're always happy to set up a call and discuss potentially doing that.
Do you guys have a success story about that at all? Anything recent?
We have several. We're actually working recently in January. Actually closed on a gentleman who owned a few small properties in the Midwest. He sold them, and we ended up taking, I don't remember how many units it was, Paul, maybe 100 units scattered across 3 or 4 properties, kind of real trendy part of a nice city. And we ended up buying a 300 plus unit deal down in the Austin area, which was a great result. Got that closed in January and put a low LIBOR floater on the deal, so he's paying in the kind of that mid-2 interest rate, and it should be much better from resetting the depreciation. And he's kind of trying to retire, so took him away from being an active real estate investor, and now we're kind of running the deal for him, and he can hopefully go and retire and move out of the cold and go to Florida.
Yeah, but he put the majority of the equity in on an exchange, and then you guys came in with money too, and then you guys found the deal, you put the debt together, and you guys are kind of asset managing the property so he can kind of enjoy his retirement.
That's
Is
right.
that a little bit about what you guys are doing?
That's basically what happened.
That sounds good. That's very interesting. So great information that's coming from Michael Becker. Michael, we appreciate you being on your own show called Ask Mike Mondays. I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.